Okay, the 4 C's of cash flow. These are the 4 things that I've identified that contractors struggle with in their business when it comes to cash flow. It's because you're doing one or more of these 4 things in your business, and that's what's killing your cash flow. So let's get into it. Number 1 is charge, and it's probably the most important. You're simply not charging enough. If you're not getting a 50% gross profit on all of your jobs, you're not making enough money to be able to have money available to do the things you need to scale and grow your business. So number 1 is you're not charging enough. And this is probably the one that happens, this is probably the single biggest thing that a lot of you are doing wrong, is you're not charging enough. So number 2 is you're not carrying enough. What does that mean? It means you don't keep enough money in the bank to carry between invoices going out and payments coming in. Sometimes you have a $10,000 expense going out, but it's going to take 3 weeks before you get that $10,000 back. And so you don't keep enough money in the bank. And that's simply all it is. If you have an operating expenses account in your bank, which you should have a separate account, you should have 3 months minimum of money that it takes of your monthly expenses. So in other words, if you have $10,000 a month in expenses, you should have $30,000 sitting in that account that doesn't get used for anything, because that will allow you to have the constant influx of things going on. It'll also protect you against rainy day, like it's an emergency fund. Something happens, you don't have work for 3 weeks, you spend $8,000 of that 10, you have the money in the bank to cover that, and then as you get back to working, you can build that back up. So you don't carry enough money in your accounts, okay? Because there's always going to be money going in and out, always. It's always going to happen. So you got to carry enough. The third thing is you don't collect enough, and this alone will help you a lot with your ins and outs. And that means that when you do a job, you should be collecting a deposit for all of the materials that you're doing. When I do jobs, it's 40% down. If it's a $100,000 job, I'm collecting $40,000 before I start the project. Some of you guys have this stuck in your head that if you can't carry the cost of the whole job and then bill 100% at the end of the job, then you don't know how to run a business, and therefore you shouldn't be in business, because any good contractor would have money in the bank to be able to cover expenses. And while I don't disagree that you shouldn't have money in the bank, but why would you carry the liability? Why would you want to have $40,000 of expenses that you've paid, and then the customer decides not to pay you? And then you have to go to court, and you have to chase after that money. So you need to collect more money up front. I always collect whatever materials I'm buying, I'm collecting the money first. If I need $5,000 in materials, I'm collecting at least $5,000. So I get $5,000 coming in and $5,000 going out. It's a 0-0 sum gain, right? It's not me not collecting anything and then $5,000 going out, and so now I'm at a negative $5,000, and then I got to try and collect the $5,000 on the back end. You shouldn't be doing that in your business. Get deposits for your job, and you should always be ahead. You should always have milestones or weekly payments or bi-weekly payments or however you set it up, but you should always be ahead. You should collect money first, pay money out second, not the other way around. If you collect the money first, you can always pay your subs right away. Does it work out perfect every single time on every job where you always collect 100% and then bill out 100%? No, it doesn't happen. Sometimes you only collect 50% and you got to bill out 100 or spend 100%. That happens. That's why you need to have money in the bank too to cover that. But don't be silly, guys. It's not a badge of honor that you can finance 100% of the project. That is not a badge of honor. That's a badge of stupidity. Whether you can do it or not, there is not a single benefit to carrying the entire cost of the project through the project. Not one. And if your customers are complaining about that, one, you either don't have the right customers, or two, you may have to adjust or be flexible. I'm not saying that you have to charge 40% on every single job you do. If I'm going to build a job and I'm not going to start it for 6 months, I may only collect 10% now to get them on the schedule. But then when I get a month out or 2 months out, when I got to order materials, I'm going to go collect the other 30%. So use your brain here. You don't have to be hard and fast with your rules, and that's the only thing you can do. Okay, so use your brain on that. Make sure you're collecting the money and then billing it out. One other thing I'll add is that your final invoice should never be more than 10% of the total cost of the project. If I'm doing a $100,000 project, my final invoice is $10,000. Why? Because 10% will be pure profit. I won't have any subcontractor cost. I won't have any expenses in there. I won't have any material costs. It should be pure profit. Of course, there's times where you may have overruns, and that may get into that. But for the most part, that is not going to be the situation. It's pure profit. That way, if a customer is being very difficult at the end of the project, and they're wanting you to do a ton of stuff, fix a bunch of things, and it's not because you didn't do a good job, it's because they're being completely unreasonable, you have the opportunity to say, you know what, keep the $10,000, I'm out of here. But what happens is, if they owe you $30,000, $40,000 or $100,000, you're going to do everything that they ask you to do because you need that money. You've now become effectively their little employee, their little do what we say type, situation, because you're like, I need the money, I need the money. Okay, Brad, you guys did a good job, but we really don't like the color of this wall. Can you repaint this wall a different color? And even if you charge, like, yeah, I can do it, but it's going to be $300 more, and they go, okay, that's, I understand, that's fine. And you go paint that wall a different color, they still have the opportunity to say, you know what, actually, we want the whole room painted now that you did that. Can you paint the whole room? Well, yeah, that'd be $600. Okay, that's not a problem. And you go paint the whole room, they still haven't paid you yet. So this can turn into whatever, and they can make you do whatever they want so that you get your final money. You don't ever want to be in that position, ever. So don't invoice your final invoice should not be more than 10%, okay? Number 4 of the 4 C's is you don't conserve enough money. Your cash flow. Remember, cash flow is in and out, okay? How much money comes in, how much money goes out. So you don't conserve enough of your cash flow. What do I mean by that? Some of you have a little bit success in your business. You got some money coming in. You're feeling all high and mighty, like I'm killing it, man. This business thing is easy, I'm killing it. And so what do? You go out and you buy a brand new $80,000, $90,000 pickup truck, but you finance it, and now you have $800 a month truck payment, plus $200 a month insurance. You're paying $1,000 a month for a truck that's going to depreciate in value to begin with. But now you have $1,000 a month. Every month, you're losing $1,000 of your cash flow. So even if you're making $5,000 a month of a net profit, you've now just eliminated $1,000 of that. And so if in 6 months you would have had $6,000 extra, and you need to go buy something for $6,000, you wouldn't have that extra money available because you're spending it on something that probably isn't necessary, and you're losing that cash flow each month. One thing I did early in my business, which killed me, is I went out and I bought truck boxes for my truck because I needed truck boxes. Of course, they had to be like the top of the line, high-end ones. And I needed a really high-end ladder rack, needed a high-end ladder rack. And I bought a van for my guy at the time who then quit 2 weeks later. And so I had a van sitting in my yard for 6 months that wasn't being used. And I bought a bunch of tools for that van for that guy. And so I had a truck payment at the time. I was spending like $2,500 a month in all of these expenses because I was financing it. And that was $2,500 a month that I needed to be able to grow my business. So you need to conserve as much as your cash flow. Again, I'm not talking about your savings, your cash flow, how much you have coming in each month. That is the lifeblood of your business. So don't go out and finance a bunch of stuff. If you want to buy an $80,000 truck, that's fine. Go pay cash for it. Now, I know a lot of people are going to say, that's stupid. Look at all the interest and blah, 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 blah. But what happens when you have $1,000 a month truck payment and then we hit a recession and all of a sudden the phone stops ringing? All of a sudden you're not getting any sales. All of a sudden you have no work lined up and you don't have the 3 months reserves built up. In 1 month you will go into a negative because you have too much going out. You have too many expenses going out. So don't go out and spend a bunch of money on monthly payments for things that you really don't need. Okay? So let's recap. You got to charge enough. Number one, you're not charging enough. Number two, you're not carrying enough. You don't have enough in savings to carry the ebbs and flows. Number three is you're not collecting enough on your deposits for your jobs. And number four is you're not conserving enough. Keep your cash flow as high as you possibly can. If that was helpful, make sure you like and subscribe. Hit the notifications so you get notified every time I drop a new video, and we'll see you in the next one.